bean harvest time. These grow to 36 inches. If you let them grow too far, they start turning white and get a little hollow. You can feel the beans growing inside, probably for next year's crop. But they recommend 12 to 18 inches. And what I'm finding is most of them are growing in pairs. Now some of these are not in pairs because I've already cut them off. But as you can see, you get quite a harvest out of these. The system that I've trellised is very simple. I've grabbed these typical green poles. They're each 6 feet long, and I made them in a teepee to fit inside my base here. They're about 3 feet wide at the base, and then one center pole. As I hitched them, I used wire wraps, regular zip ties, and I used several of them so it would stay nice and strong, which it has. And so they just kept growing up and up. I think I only had, the package said it would give me 20 seeds. They gave me 23 seeds, and 2 didn't come up, so I'm 1 ahead of the game. But you see the harvest is just crazy. Now you may wonder what these taste like. I've already had some. Tastes like a green bean. This really, if I gave you the kind of green bean we're growing right now in that bed, which is the traditional bush bean, and you taste one of these, you probably wouldn't know them apart. Texture would be a little different just because of the length, but flavor-wise, whoa, this is a nice pear. And I just love the way they grow in pairs. The problem is, it's hard to find them all. Like anything, you stand here for an hour picking and think you've got them all. Then you come by and realize, hey, I missed that one, I missed this one. They blend in with their surroundings very well.
So this is the type of pole bean that we picked. These are called Orient Wonder, and these came from Botanical Interests. And you can see on the picture there was a very, very pretty purple flower before we actually got our beans. And Tom is going to show you what we do to prepare them and store them so that we have them all winter long. So the beans all got rinsed and then put into a couple of towels to dry them, because what we're going to be doing is preparing them to freeze batches of them, and you want them as dry as possible. So that's what Tom is doing right now, is he's just rolling them up so they end up being nice and dry.
Yeah, they won't be totally dry, but we'll do our best. Now we have several uses for these coming up. Even in the short term, I'll be making a ratatouille with a lot of the vegetables that are ripening now in the garden. We've got some eggplant, we've got tomatoes, there's some squashes, so a lot of this is going to get cooked in the not too distant future. But the problem is, it's the not too distant future. It's not tomorrow. So I'm going to cut these all about 5-6 inch lengths. When I use them in the ratatouille, I may cut them down again into 1.5s. I want them as big as possible without being ridiculous for my freezing techniques. And again, some of them may only wind up being frozen for another 3 or 4 weeks, but that'll keep this freshness and the beauty of these beans. Look at those, look at the color, look at the length.
Here, I'm just going to focus in on some of the ones that are here. Some of them are turning a little bit sort of limey green color, and that's just because they're aging, but as long as they're nice and firm when you squeeze them, you know that they're still good and still fine to use.
All right, so first of all, I have this really nice vegetable glove for keeping my hands from getting sliced. And I have a container right here where I'll be keeping compost. So cut the ends, and then my 1, 2, 3. Now, you may ask, oh, am I gonna blanch these? The answer is no. Green beans do not need to be blanched. If anything, they're such a tiny and delicate little vegetable. If I was to blanch them, even just for 30 seconds, they're gonna start that cooking process, and there's no need. I've researched it. I have not personally done the research, but everything I'm reading says that it does not matter whether you blanch or not blanch. So in my opinion, my delicious green bean, as is, quick frozen, is going to be perfect.
And just to say, we actually have been using this method of not blanching the green beans for quite a few years now, after reading about it and other people's research into it. And it's worked out perfectly.
Yeah,
We've had no problems with them whatsoever.
Yeah, we've never seen any adverse effects we've never sat there going, geez, these might have been better if they were blanched. The only thing we ever say is, maybe they would have been better if we picked them sooner, but that's another story. Oh, look at these beauties. Okay, now, I'm only doing 3 this time because one of my methods, at this point, I don't know if this batch is going to be with a dinner sometime in January, or whether it's gonna go in a pot of ratatouille. So I make all my packages the size of a single serving meal. So there it is. I think if Kathy and I had, we're big eaters.
I think you need a little more
Yeah,
than
we
that.
need a few more. Chop, chop, chop. Give it a cut. Give it a cut. There we go. There's a nice portion right there. Okay? And over here, I have freezer plastic. It is slightly thicker than the regular. I'll take this, go like this, and then on a diagonal. Ooh, this one. And as tight as I possibly can. I want as little air as possible in this package. Go like that. Go like this. One more roll. Come like this. And again, nice and tight. And there we have it. Green beans for 2. If I was gonna make my ratatouille, I'm gonna need maybe 3 of these packages, but it's okay. At least I have the ability to choose how I'm going to handle this. Now, when I get into this pile a little more, when I come to these, I gotta make a decision.
Some of them, if they are a little bit too far gone or have been too long on the vine, all you have to do is put them aside and let them dry, and you'll end up with seeds to use next season or whenever you're ready to plant again.
So, oh, that's delicious.
Still tender?
Yeah,
All right,
and actually really sweet.
we're in good shape then.
I like it.
And here they are. We end up putting all of those tight little bags of beans into a Ziploc bag and label them. And we'll push all the air out of the Ziploc bag too. And this is how they get stored in the freezer. So the next thing on our list to work on is cucumbers. And of course, if you look on the internet right now, there's all kinds of recipes out there for pickles, and pickles are absolutely wonderful. So what I was hoping to show you today was my mom's recipe for creamy herbed cucumber salad. And it does take a little bit of preparation. And this is something that's really good to use for those cucumbers that are not really perfect eating cucumbers, ones that maybe are a little misshapen or a little oversized, where the seeds have gotten a little bit big, but the cucumber itself is still very tasty. So Tom is going to start by cutting up the cucumbers, and we do leave the skins on these.
And what we don't use is the seed. We don't need the extra water. So I just use a spoon, scoop them out. This was not one of our cucumbers. This was given to us from a neighbor. And clearly, it's a little bit bigger than it should have been, but for this purpose, it'll be absolutely delicious. There we go. Seeds out. Now it's very thin there. And so for our cucumber salad, the best thing to do with that, where it's really thin, not very meaty, have a snack. Now, on a small one like this, I do halves, but I'm going to go to quarters. And I want them to be nice sized chunks. So probably a 1/4 inch thick. Now, this particular recipe, if you actually don't like the skins that much, you could always stripe it. I'll show you what I mean. So let's say that's a really tough skin. Well, you can find a middle ground by simply putting a few stripes in it. Yeah.
But typically on fresh cucumber, that skin is absolutely delicious, so
Yep.
it's worth leaving in. So what we've prepared here is a colander. This is a plastic colander in a plastic container. And we also have some canning and pickling salt on the side. And I do recommend using a plastic colander because we are going to be salting these cucumbers. They're going to be producing liquid, and you don't want to have any kind of a container that could be reactive to the salt and liquid. That might alter the flavor of your cucumbers as they marinate in it.
Okay, it's time to finish step 1, which is the preparation of the cucumber. Some cukes, throw some salt, throw some cukes, throw some salt, and the last of the cukes, and let's give it a nice toss. You know, I can feel the salt. You know, how do you know there's enough? Typically when you can feel it on your hands, you've got it, they're all dusted up.
So next step is get out your plastic wrap and get a piece and cover the cucumbers. These cucumbers are actually going to end up in the refrigerator for 24 hours so that most of the water leaves them. The salt is going to draw out the water.
Okay, we got a plate. It's smaller than the colander, so as these shrink from water loss, it won't be much. There'll be a quarter cup maybe. But that water would have gone into the sauce, the nice cold sauce, and watered it down once you finish this process. So this is just perfect, absolutely perfect.
And so we put a heavy container, usually, honestly, just a soup can or something now can go on top of that plate, and put it in the refrigerator and look at it a day later. As I said, I think 24 hours is 24 hours is a good amount of time. But if you have to leave it in there a little longer, you can. All right, we're all good. Time for the fridge. So our cucumbers have been marinating. It's been about 24 hours. So it's time to get them, to rinse them, get them to a point where they're ready to actually use in the salad and to make our dressing. So let's get started. So I'm going to start by preparing my herbs, and I picked some nice fresh parsley and basil from the garden this morning. This is a flat leaf parsley, and I'm simply going to chop it up. I roll it up a little bit, and I start chopping it. Just a rough chop to start, and then we'll go a little finer. I like to put lots and lots of herbs in my salad dressing for this dish. All right. So there is the parsley. There's probably, I want to say maybe a packed quarter cup worth right here. And then I'm going to start on the basil. Now the basil, I'm going to take the leaves off, and I'm not going to use the flowers. As I said, this was fresh out of the garden this morning. And if there are any leaves that are not quite right, just don't use them. But I do like to pinch the flowers out because they tend to be a little rougher, a little tougher. And this, we're going to put a little less of this than we did of the parsley. There we go. And again, we're just going to do a rough chop, and I like to kind of roll it all up together and then start cutting it. If you use a large knife, it chops very easily. And there we go. Now the other ingredients that I've gathered together here are, first of all, sour cream. And I like using a light sour cream for this dish. I also use mayonnaise. This happens to be Hellmann's regular mayonnaise, but you can use a light mayonnaise too. The only thing I would say is if you're going to use something that's sweet like a Miracle Whip, then you might want to omit the sugar in this recipe. I also use quite a bit of dill. Now, I did not have fresh dill. We planted dill this year and something ate it all. So I am going to use just dried dill weed, but this works perfectly fine. Also some fresh ground black pepper. Oh, and a key ingredient that I forgot to mention is balsamic vinegar. And you want to use the best balsamic vinegar that you can, because of course the best balsamics taste better. That's really all there is to it. We'll also add a little bit of sugar to this. So I have a bowl to mix my dressing in, and I'm going to start with the sour cream and the mayo. And get it over. All right. So it's 2 parts sour cream to 1 part mayo. And I've just got a large tablespoon here, and I am measuring by eye because I've done this many times. Depending on how many cucumbers you're putting in there, it's probably a half a cup of sour cream to a 1/4 cup of mayonnaise. But again, I've done this so many times, I just kind of go by eye. Here's the mayo. All right. I'm now going to add a splash of the balsamic vinegar. I want to say that you want to add a good teaspoon of it. And about a half of a teaspoon of sugar. And then the dill weed. Now the dill weed, you're going to put a good tablespoon's worth in there. I'm just going to shake some out. A few good turns of fresh cracked pepper. This is actually a 3 peppercorn mix. And I'll start by mixing this up. Let's get this going first before we add the other fresh herbs. Now, I'm not going to add any salt to this. The reason being that even though we rinsed the salted cucumbers, there is going to still be some residual salt flavor in there. And if you taste the cucumber, you'll be able to tell that. All right, now we're going to add all of these lovely herbs. And we're adding all of it. And we're going to mix it in well. Now all these flavors, the longer they sit, are going to meld together. So there we go, we're all set. So beside the cucumbers in this salad, there's one other vegetable, and that is sweet onion. So I am going to cut the onion into thin slices. I only need about, say, half a cup. Skin off of it. And then I like to leave it in kind of strips. So we're going to thinly cut it. And you do want to make sure it is a sweet onion. If you have an onion that is too strong, it's going to overpower the taste of your cucumber. It's going to be a bit too much. So make sure you're going for a Vidalia type of onion or other type of sweet onion. Let's see, that's actually probably about enough. You don't want to have too much. As I said, you don't want the onion flavor to overpower your cucumber. So here's our bowl of cucumbers that have been salted and have been sitting in the fridge for 24 hours. And you can see they still look very nice, and actually texture-wise, they're a little bit softer than they were when they were first put in here, but they actually still have a lot of crunch. And you can see that there is a good bit of liquid that has come out of them. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to rinse these well to get the salt off of them as much as we can, and we'll put them aside for just a little bit to let whatever water we used for draining them to run off. And then we can add the dressing. So it's time to put it all together. I have my cucumbers that have been rinsed and have been drained for a little while again so that they're not very wet. I'll put that in the bowl. I'm going to add the onion that I sliced up. Now the dressing, go ahead and taste it, you know, as soon as you're done with it, or maybe actually let it sit for a little bit, because as I said, the dressing flavors tend to meld together. If you feel like you need it a little sweeter, you can add a little more sugar. This does tend to be a somewhat tangy dressing. So it's a little bit to taste, but as I said, I don't think you're going to need to add any salt because there's some residual salt left in the cucumbers from when they were marinated in their salt bath. Now let's add our dressing. I want to get every little bit out. And we mix it all together. Now, this dressing and cucumber vegetable mixture will last in the fridge for several days. If you find after you've had it in the fridge for a day that you're getting what looks like some water in the bottom of the bowl, well, that's because your cucumbers didn't actually drain out quite enough water. And it's okay, you can just mix it all up together and it will be absolutely fine. But here we go. The other thing is, you don't want to cut your cucumbers too thin. If you cut them very, very thin and then you marinate them in the salt mixture, you're going to end up with a kind of floppy cucumber, and you want them nice and firm. And they're still nice and crunchy. So here you go. I hope you'll try it. My mom's cucumber salad mix.